Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Do we have quorum? I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yes, we have quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good morning and welcome to the Anne Arundel County Delegation Meeting. I'm Delegate Heather Bagnall, Chair of the delegation with Vice Chair Delegate Dana Jones. Before we conduct further introductions, I would ask everyone to welcome Delegate Mark Chang, District 32, who will be offering our pledge and our prayer today.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. If we could join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could all join in the time of prayer and reflection. This morning, as members of the Anne Arundel County Delegation and members of the General Assembly, we're so thankful for this opportunity to serve. We're thankful for the impact that we can make. May we never forget this great honor that we have. We especially lift up this morning our community partners who are here today presenting the Anne Arundel County Health Department of Crisis Intervention Team and also the Hospice of Chesapeake, who are there for our residents in Anne Arundel County, especially during difficult times. We thank them for their partnership, and we look forward to continue to work together during times of great difficulty, but also being there for the residents of Anne Arundel County always. Amen.
Thank you very much. As always, I'm going to quickly go through our introductions to allow time for our speakers. I want to first welcome our senators, Dawn Guile from District 33, Senator Pam Beidle from District 32, Senator Brian Simonaire from District 31, Senator Sarah Alfrith from District 30, Senator Jim Rosapet from District 21, and Senator Clarence Lamb from District 12. And I'm going to wait to announce our birthdays because I want to make sure our folks are here in the meeting to hear it. So I do also want to welcome our guests. We have the Anne Arundel County chapter of the AARP. They are joining us via the live stream. I also want to recognize our counsel, Matt Carpenter, our delegation secretary, Roger Massey, my chief of staff, Rory Nolan, and Josh Paper, Chief of Staff to Vice Chair Jones, who are providing technical support for the meeting, and Nicole Butler, Chief of Staff to Mike Rogers, who has been providing support as we transition into our new role. As a reminder, all delegation meetings will be on Zoom due to space constraints. Due to a conflict of schedules, Chief Awad and Chief Wolford will not be joining us today, but will be coming to a future delegation meeting. So it is my honor to welcome our Anne Arundel County Department of Health, the Mental Health Agency of Anne Arundel County, and our Crisis Intervention Team. Welcome Adrian Mickler, Trish Shelby, Chelsea Bednarshock, and Jen Corbin, and I would ask you to introduce your teams.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, delegation. My name is Adrian Mickler, and I represent the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. I have with me today Catherine Gray, the Clinical and Deputy Director for the agency, and Jen Corbin, the Director of our agency's Crisis Response, and Chelsea Bednarzik, our Chief Operating Officer. We are a private, not-for-profit entity serving Anne Arundel County as the Mental Health Authority, and together with our local Addiction Authority partner in the Department of Health, we form the local Behavioral Health Authority. As you can see, our nation's healthcare system is complex, and behavioral health seems even more challenging to many individuals. A big part of our job is to help our residents find and understand the care they need to support their mental well-being. You're probably aware that it's estimated that 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 6 youth experience mental illness each year. In addition, it's estimated that there has been at least a 25% increase in the prevalence of anxiety and depression since the pandemic. And while that's trending downward, it is still significantly above pre-pandemic estimates. Individuals who had never accessed the mental health system before are reaching out for support. We've been fortunate to be able to fast-track services with telehealth and supporting new providers and programs designed to increase capacity, but there's much work left to be done. Our mental well-being is a priority for the entire community. We hear time and time again in almost all of our county's planning efforts that mental health is a top priority. More than ever, individuals are aware of the importance of their mental well-being. For us, this is an opportunity to enhance our prevention efforts and increase our education activities. Stigma is no longer the barrier it once was, as conversations about our mental health increase. We're normalizing that conversation and recognize its importance of mental wellness in our health. We know that health disparities exist, but again, for us, this is an opportunity to develop programs in areas where lack of access to care is most apparent. We analyze the data and work with our providers to enhance our continuum of care, offering incentives where we can, technical support, and quality trainings for their staff. Through the partnerships we have built with other county departments, we're able to leverage services and programs to serve even more residents and assure that our efforts aren't duplicated. This is imperative as we recognize the importance of social determinants of health, such as housing and transportation, and the impact that those have on healthcare. Our job is to break down any barrier we can and help our residents navigate these systems so that they can be successful in their treatment goals. It's also important that we identify critical data elements and collect that data. We need to be able to analyze the information to help us design programs where there is the most need and enhance our systems to make the most impact. We know that the best opportunities are in collaborative models and leveraging best practices. We use data to help us identify root causes so that our solutions will help us provide sustainable change and show cost-effective value added. Anne Arundel is a very lucky county, having set the bar for a robust crisis system. In Anne Arundel County, our goal is to prevent crisis by getting people to the most appropriate level of care. That's one of the most important things that our crisis system does. Person-centered, trauma-informed interventions are the hallmark of our crisis system. And one of our most valuable assets is acknowledging that there's no one-size-fits-all in healthcare. We're a human service, and pathways to recovery take many forms. Flexibility is the area where we shine. And with that, I'm going to ask Catherine to describe two of our specialized programs. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm Catherine Gray. I'm the Deputy Director and Clinical Director for the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. And I wanted to share with you two of our newer programs that are filling gaps in our behavioral health system. The first program is our mentoring program. This program serves children in our public behavioral health system. So those are youngsters with Maryland Medicaid or who are uninsured. We serve children between the ages of 12 and 21. And this program matches each child or young adult with an individual mentor. The children engage in activities with their mentors one-on-one, as well as doing group activities with the other participants. Typically, they spend about 12 hours a month with their mentors. Families are also included in several of the activities to support that family well-being. The program focuses on creating healthy relationships, and they do this with the support of the other individuals in the program who are experiencing similar challenges. This program has positive outcomes for both children and their families, including improved school attendance, improved family interactions, and increased self-confidence for the youngsters themselves. On the other end of the spectrum are some new pilot projects that we have for older adults with severe and persistent mental illness, exiting our state hospital system, as well as individuals who have aged in place in our residential rehabilitation programs. These individuals require assistance with their activities of daily living, as well as their mental health care. For individuals receiving SSI as their only source of income and aging out of our mental health housing programs or exiting state hospitals, there are very few housing options for them. So these pilot projects are filling those gaps for the older adults, and that allows us to create these customized, individualized service plans. Within the crisis system, we've seen an increase in our call volume for calls for individuals with dementia, Alzheimer's, housing needs for older adults, and resources for older adults that straddle multiple systems. As we respond to these calls, we will continue to identify and fill gaps for individuals across the lifespan. I thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Jen Corbin, our Director of Crisis Response.
Thanks, Catherine. Hello, everybody. My name is Jen Corbin, and I'm the Director of Anne Arundel County Crisis Response. Today, I just wanted to hit on mainly 4 of our programs, the first being the Warm Line, wanting to just kind of talk about the consistent volume that we see here, being kind of the no wrong call center for the county. As you can see in the data, that basically the call is higher and is staying kind of consistent through FY22. With that, kind of when the calls come in, that's where you see the adjustment between our different units here at Crisis Response. One of the first ones I kind of wanted to talk about is our Safe Station program. One of the positives I have to say is, as you will see, the numbers are going down. I wanted to explain what that looks like in our substance use world. While Safe Station assessments have gone down, I think the positive piece to look at here is the reason it's going down is that over the years since 2017 is that we've been able to educate our community about the crisis system. So while our assessments have gone down, our interaction with people in treatment has actually gone up, meaning that instead of having to use fire stations all the time to do assessments or to do stable visits, we're able to do those in the community through people calling into the Warm Line. And just that education has allowed us to get that information out and see maybe a decrease in the need for using the fire stations, but is still helping people access treatment. With our Safe Station program, we've seen a 70% success rate in connecting to treatment. 66% of that is connected to residential treatment, and 34% of that is to non-residential, to recovery housing, outpatient, and some of that is actually connection to mental health treatment. One of the cool things we've seen through our Safe Station program is by having an access point that's 24/7, some of the people actually presenting to fire stations are ending up needing more connection to mental health treatment or to housing than just substance use. So it's really been a nice piece where we've been able to connect people to more than just substance use to kind of help their overall well-being. So I'm seeing that as a huge success in our program. The other program I know a lot of people are interested about is our mobile crisis. And one of the key pieces here that I'd like to just kind of show is that you see that it kind of goes up and down and up and down, but our dispatches are up this year. And like Catherine was talking about, one of our increases has been in our child population. And I see that as positive as we've increased our communication with our school systems, allowing counselors and principals and assistant principals to call in and staff cases through the Warm Line so that we can better dispatch out and be prepared for the calls, allowing us to also work with the parents as the situation is happening in the schools. I think the piece that I want to focus on today with our mobile crisis team is we hear a lot about kind of diverting from 911 and getting mobile teams out without police. Well, anybody that knows me knows that I kind of look at our police department as a partner, and because our officers are well trained, I believe in the community policing model. But for the piece where an officer maybe doesn't need to be present, or a family has avoided calling 911 because they don't want police in the home and they want to speak to someone about getting help, I think what's interesting is that 28% of our calls are self-deployments through the Warm Line. That is families calling in or individuals calling in wanting help, and us being able to meet them where they are. And so I think that's an important piece. While police are still police and fire are still 64% of our dispatches for mobile crisis, I think 28% is a really good number of dispatches where mobile crisis is going out at the request of the person who wants the service. So I think that's an important piece to look at as we're trying to balance safety and needs of the community, and wants of the community, of people maybe wanting an officer, not wanting an officer, which kind of transitions me into our crisis intervention team program. I think one of the most interesting things right now with our CIT, as people know, they are highly well known for their kind of pairing with us. The unique piece that we're finding is that our CIT embedded in our crisis system is becoming very well known throughout the state. We have been inviting people in from other jurisdictions to learn what we do. We are really paving the way on this, with having worked this year with Midshore. We've had Salisbury Police Department out here. Montgomery County was just out here. PG County was just out here. A lot of this is because I am really pushing for people to see that we don't want to put social work in the police department. We want to put the police department in our crisis systems. Getting that comparative thinking that we can together is super important. And I think other agencies are starting to see that. And so we've opened up the ability for them to come visit and see how that partnership can work, so that we can have our safe responses when there's someone that's at high risk of violence or the home is unsafe. We can have that special trained officer with us to kind of fill that gap of safety and also work on that community policing model. And I think we've been pretty successful in that. And the last piece I just want to share is the pilot program we started working on about 1.5 years ago that we're seeing great strides in which we've paired one of our CIT clinicians with our Homeland Security department in the police. And this is where we do a lot of our threat assessments through school threats, through community threats. And we're seeing a huge success in getting ahead on situations that may have been dangerous, where our clinician can do that threat assessment with the police department, looking at the mental health component and the safety factor. And I think that's been a real key as well. And the last piece, I just want to praise the police department. They have been successful in the One Mind Pledge, and that we are doing a ton of training in which every officer is trained and certified in mental health first aid, and that we have a large part of our police department, I believe it's like 216 trained in CIT. Don't quote me on that number. And also a large number going through critical incident stress management. And those are all voluntary programs. We do not force our officers into that training. That is because they want to be trained. I believe in having our officers want to be trained and be on those calls for service. So I'm super proud of that piece and our partnership with all of our county organizations. So I'll kind of leave it at that and open it up, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and to the members, you should have gotten all of these slides in your email as well. So if you want to follow up, obviously we are so grateful and for the resources that we have here in Anne Arundel County. And I know we have some questions from the members, so I'm going to turn it over to Delegate Bartlett, who has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here today. I know the work that you're doing, and it's great work. You know, we've all, I've actually seen, some of us have seen the work in action. So I really appreciate the work, all of it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about one of the slides that was on the correctional. It was the slide that had the inmates and their proof. I think it was one of the slides, maybe not. But let me just ask you this. So inmates receiving mental health, the numbers are about range from 2020 to 2023 from about 5,000. It seems to be about consistent around 5,000. So I wanted to talk to you all about your measurement with respect to success and what's being done for those clients as best as you can, you know, without any HIPAA violations, of course, So what are some of the programs, and are you seeing levels of success, and how are you measuring that effectiveness? Thanks.
Yeah, I can speak to our jail diversion program, which has between jail diversion and CIT, we are seeing a high success rate in our jail diversion program. And that's people who are arrested on low-level crimes that come in and screen positive for mental health, substance use, any behavioral health situation can get referred to. I have a clinician every morning down at the jail, and we can do an assessment, and that assessment we can offer treatment right there, which then goes before the judge. And if the judge agrees, they're released and right into a program. This has been really great at breaking down barriers, because one of the things we saw years ago is we put people on pretrial, or we send people out and say you're on probation, but do we ask, can they get to probation? Do they know when their next appointment is? With release with our jail diversion program, our clinician and our case manager help them, and we transport them to their intake at pretrial. We take them to all the meetings they need to. We get them to their first mental health appointment or substance use appointment. In some cases, they come out and go right into a crisis bed. So we're linking them directly. In that program, we have less than a 5% recidivism rate, because we are breaking down those barriers that before they weren't able to access care. The second piece I'd like to talk a little bit about, which is not really a program, is the amount of education we've done with our judges, and the fact that judges are now calling us into the courtroom as they see things, whether it's in bail review, whether it's a case of someone who's in jail. We had one the other day, person is in jail and was in for their hearing of release, and the judge was just concerned on whether they would follow up with their mental health treatment upon release, called us in, and then we end up doing an assessment to link them as they're released. So I think some of our education to the state's attorney's office, public defender, and the judges, we're doing this unique thing where we're actually coming into the courtroom or going back into the jail and giving some recommendations so that we're filling those gaps so people can be successful upon release. And I think that's been a big piece of what we've been able to do in our jail side of things.
Madam Chair, if I can just ask one quick follow-up question. So Jen, what about with respect, I heard you mention the various, I guess, I think you were speaking of the various law enforcement that was receiving training, CRT training. So let's go, so now we've gotten released, let's go to arrest and talk about, is that, I would imagine that would be part of the training, and how does one, can you just give us a quick overall on training police, and quick overall on training police on recognizing the difference between a mental health breakdown and how to work with that particular arrest versus anything else, whatever the else is. And I'm not quite sure what the else is, because sometimes you all see people at their worst.
Yeah, so that's a good question, because we're doing a lot right now on that piece. So right now in service at the police department, every officer will be getting trauma-informed care training. That'll be throughout the year. It takes us all year to train and in service because of our police department. Also, the other piece is when they recognize, one of the unique things is that there may be a crime committed, but there's mental health, they will call us out or forward the police report. And then if emergency petition is done, so we treat mental health before the arrest. And so that piece is we stabilize. If someone ends up having to go inpatient, but has a warrant or a charge, that is forwarded to us. And the unique piece is our CIT team goes and brings them down to the commissioner upon release from a mental health unit. If they're cleared at the hospital mental health and go in straight to the commissioner after being evaluated, we notify the jail, the mental health unit, and then we are actually involved throughout the judicial process with them, whether that's bail review the next day, whether that's if they're held, getting another assessment done, and working with Jennifer Road and the judicial system. Our officers have the ability to forward reports immediately to our CIT officers in the unit, and that's how that occurs. The other piece, which is really cool, when I talked about the pilot with our HSI program on threats, that clinician also looks at all the calls for service from the previous day, not just threats, to see if there's something that was missed that she can then forward to we have a hospital diversion program that works with our hospitals, and our hospital and jail can work with Candace at HSI on any cases that may have been missed where maybe a report wasn't forwarded. So she actually sits over in our Homeland Security Department, so she's always working with a detective.
I think one of the important things to look at is the pie chart of the source of dispatch. Our largest source of dispatch is actually our police department for mobile crisis teams. That means our police officers at first contact with an individual are recognizing that these individuals are experiencing something that they're not able to deal with. So they're calling out mobile crisis. You know, we help them understand you're not going to arrest your way out of a mental health crisis. That just doesn't work. So what can we offer? And what we can offer is mobile crisis and all of the follow-up. So we come in, we assess, we follow the individual through the system. If they're charged or if they're hospitalized, we still follow them.
Really quickly, just as quickly as you can, from arrest or from law enforcement arriving and calling you all, what is the average time frame? Because it seems to me that while we're trying not to arrest, that individual has to be held, you know, and if this is a longer conversation, then that's fine, because I don't want to, you know, take up, I see some other hands, but I am kind of interested in that time frame from recognizing that there's possibly a crime and then also recognizing that there's a mental health breakdown. So perhaps we can talk offline, unless you know, like the average call time. Okay.
Yeah, I have the actual response time average. Because our county is unique, and we're kind of trying to be centrally located, it is 20 to 30 minutes to respond to a call for service. The only place that is different is South County, because it's so far down and traffic wise, I would say it's more like 45 to 50 minutes, but anywhere else it's between 20 minutes and 30 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your indulgence.
Absolutely.
Just have one thing to add. I'm sorry, I have one thing to add to that. In addition, our 911 operators are currently being trained to help recognize some of those as well, so that they would be able to deploy a CIT trained officer before our teams are called if needed.
Thank you so much. And Delegate Bartlett, I was allowing a lot of leeway because this is something that we don't necessarily understand. And when we're looking at legislation, we're only looking at one piece of a large spectrum. So I appreciate everyone giving us that wider perspective. And Ms. Gray, I do apologize that that was my oversight. I didn't see you in my box. I didn't mean to forget you. Delegate Pruski, you had a question.
Yes, good morning. Pretty familiar, obviously, leaving the Anne Arundel Council, the great work that occurs. But I think Delegate Bartlett and others are really trying to find best practices. While we represent Anne Arundel County, the sharing of information with others impacts the whole state. So I wanted to ask Ms. Corbin, Ms. Gray, or Ms. Michler, based upon your experience of talking to judges or speaking to them, is there a policy change or staffing issues, concerns? Because I know I've talked with some of my colleagues from Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore. It's sure I can come to the training, I don't have the people. So I'm just curious about if you have a suggestion, either ratio wise, staffing, policy. Again, we represent all of Maryland while it's Anne Arundel County, and we're doing a great job, but it's good to kind of hear that. So I'd be interested if you had any suggestions or thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to that because I've probably spent the last 6 months or so working with, I think, like 8 jurisdictions. I just came from a CIT statewide meeting where I was sharing a lot of what we do. While we're robust and big, I know that there's smaller jurisdictions. Like I said, Salisbury came out and I helped them come up with some ideas of how they can incorporate, because what we look at is the smallest jurisdictions having a lot of police departments and how they can work together. One of my suggestions, which is how we started CIT, is take your mobile clinicians and if you need to in a day, split and work together with a trained officer. If you're trying, a lot of problems right now is police departments can't get the CIT piece up and running. There is a clinical shortage, and we know there's an officer shortage, but we're also starting to run into not having enough clinicians. Just with Montgomery County, I've spent 3 days with them. I'm going back out there Monday. Their issue is clinical shortage. And the problem is we're all jockeying for the same clinicians. So that's where I was trying to help them think creatively on how they can utilize their mobile teams and partner with the police in different ways. There was a slide you didn't see where in some calls, you can send one clinician instead of two, and some you send two, and in some you send a clinician and an officer. Getting some of these other counties to think outside the box is where I'm trying to help them right now. Come in, look at ours. You're not going to run like Anne Arundel, but what piece can you take back? And what was really unique with both PG and Montgomery, who have been out here, they've brought their captains and majors and different people so that they can hear, because we got to get police and the clinical side to both meet halfway in the middle. And that's what's not happening. Everybody's still working in silos. And so really working with that piece, which is why in like the Midshore, I've met individually with some of the smaller police departments to get them to see eye to eye with the clinical side. But where we're running short right now is until we work on, we're going to lose our clinicians, because if I can sit behind a screen and do therapy at home and make more money, why am I going to come work crisis response for less money, walking into a domestic dispute where I could get shot or injured, when I can sit behind a screen making 2 times the amount of money? I'm losing clinicians to private practice monthly right now. People are staying on part-time, but they can go work full-time during the day doing therapy. And until we adjust that balance, because we're coming out of COVID, but we're not changing the COVID rules for therapy, we're going to struggle. While these ideas that we have are great, we're not going to have the clinical support we need in the field.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much to our presenters, to Ms. Michler and Ms. Gray and Ms. Corbin. What great work Anne Arundel County is doing on this front. It's really just so admirable, and I'm especially pleased to hear you are sharing your models and your success stories with the rest of the state, because that is obviously needed. My, I hope, quick question is about the point that one of you made regarding, the growing number of incidents and cases involving younger people. And I assume you mean that you must be seeing a lot more issues with school age kids. Delegate Bagnall, Chair Bagnall, and Delegate Rogers and I went to the community conversation the other night at Severna Park High School about that bullying incident there. And I don't want to discuss that incident per se, but I wondered, it was so impressive, first of all, the response, and I assume there's been, help by some of you with the school system and trying to get at these issues, at bullying. Something that was said, and I forget if it was by the principal or the superintendent, which struck me, was that not only are we helping and the victim's family, but we're making sure the student who was doing the bullying gets the help that they need and that family needs. And you don't hear that talked about so much. And it is difficult, I understand, for a lot of people to be sympathetic to someone doing the bullying. Can any of you address that? Because obviously in a situation like that person that is the aggressor has some real serious problems himself or herself.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little, because that kind of shows the uniqueness of our program. We do that all the time, and even in crimes, because a lot of times, while there's a victim, the suspect is usually someone who is struggling as well. That's where we're unique, in that our mobile crisis is normally dispatched out to the victim. And because there may be legal charges or issues, that's where our CIT comes into play for the person who has done the offense, whether it's school age or adult. And so that's kind of how we approach ELISA. We've been doing that for years. Because again, that also goes to whether it's adult or young person, making sure that they get the help they need as well. So, but we do split it so that there is not any cross issues in a case. So we've done that. Actually, we've done that all the way since the Capitol Gazette situation, because we know that there's impact on both sides. So we do it. I don't know if Catherine wants to speak any to that as well.
Yeah, there's the old adage, hurt people. And that is something we have really been pushing out around training, understanding, and recognizing it, individuals who are exhibiting behaviors. Those aren't necessarily behaviors that are criminal or willful. Sometimes it's a result of trauma, and we do have to take that trauma-informed approach with individuals. And that's something we've been doing for years and years. Those partnerships and getting the partners to understand and buy into that. So it's not always about punishment or consequences. Yes, there are going to be consequences for behaviors, but ensuring that people are getting treatment when they're exhibiting behaviors that are problematic.
And I think the other thing that I would like to mention is the agency as a whole. We have a really wonderful relationship with our school system through our mental health task force. And we meet with school leadership at least monthly, if not more often, to look at gaps and programs that can be brought up and where we need to. When I say leverage services, we know that they're working on implementing the blueprint. And there's mental health components in there. So making sure that those programs aren't duplicative, but really complement our continuum of care that we have in the county as it exists now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. And Delegate Simmons.
Thank you. And I really can tell you, I really appreciate the crisis response team. I've worked at Arundel Medical Center for the last 2.5 years in security, mostly in the emergency department. I know you guys do a wonderful work. I just have a couple of questions. One, I'm revolving around the emergency petition. How often is that to you, and under what circumstances do you implement it? And can you explain what is the emergency petition?
Yeah, so you want me to explain what it is first? Yeah, okay. So an emergency petition is something that can be done either by the police department or by an independently licensed clinician, in which there is a mental health crisis where we deem someone to be either unsafe, homicidal, or suicidal, meaning towards themselves they want to injure, or to someone else. And then at that point, police are to take them to a hospital for an evaluation. The third way, which is where the Warm Line does a lot of education with families, the third way is that if a family member feels that their loved one is a danger to themselves or to others, they can go down to the court system and fill out paperwork, and a judge can order an emergency petition in which police will serve that. When they get to the hospital, basically, what happens is they're assessed. Now, I think where the misconception comes across is that everybody is assessed by a psychiatrist. That is not necessarily the case in the ED. It's any medical doctor will evaluate them to see if they need to go inpatient or return to the community. That is where our work begins. Every emergency petition that's done in Anne Arundel County is given to us. We then look through them. I don't have enough staffing to assess every emergency petition, because a lot of them are done by officers where we're not on the calls, or if a family member got one, we're not necessarily involved with that. We look through them. We try to pick 2 or 3 that we think are at the highest risk of reoccurrence. We reach out to both hospitals every day, Anne Arundel and Baltimore, Washington, to see if they are interested in services. Doesn't matter if they're going inpatient or returning to the community. At that time, when we make that call every day, the hospital also will say, hey, we had someone self-present today with mental health that we are concerned about. They are interested in crisis services. That's where our hospital diversion program will then go to the hospital, meet with them while they're in the hospital, and attempt to get them linked to treatment. I hope that answered your question. Did I miss anything?
Not so much, but yeah, that's fine. Also, where do you see spikes in the county? Like, are you seeing certain parts of the county where you're having a higher number of people being brought into the hospitals or treatment facilities? I don't know that I'm seeing a certain district, but what I will tell you is I'm seeing a huge spike in general. Our pendulum has really, really swung to the mental health, and what I mean by that is people are experiencing higher mental health acuity in which there is danger. We've had several in the last couple of weeks where there's been risk of
people hurting family members, getting out there, actually warm line staying on the call while we're dispatching 911 because we can't wait for our response time where things are escalating pretty quickly. I don't know if I attribute all that to COVID as much as I just attribute it to people not staying connected to their mental health resources. It's known that when you're struggling with mental health and you stabilize, you tend to go off your medication. We're seeing a lot of people unmedicated right now. I'm not sure I have all the answers to that. We're looking at it, but I can say over the last 3 months, I've been working with AAMC and BWMC, our acuity level. Not that our number of EPs in the ED are high, but our wait times are longer in the emergency rooms. And in talking with both hospitals, that's because the people waiting to be placed, their acuity is so high that there's even risk of them acting out in the hospital. So that makes the wait times for people to get beds longer. And so we're seeing a much bigger swing on our mental health side.
Sure. And with the increase of people being brought in that are found because of being on drugs or alcohol, obviously there's a spike there, and most people that are coming in, or at least a large number of them, are in cuffs or sometime in shackles, are boundly acting out. There's reports that EMS workers, hospital workers, going to be injured by individuals that are presented to the hospital by crisis in Arundel County Police and surrounding police departments. So I hope we're looking at that as well. What about our veterans? So obviously, we have veterans now presenting to hospitals with mental health, which also poses a little different, unique problem because they come with a lot of specialized training and a lot of
Delegate Simmons, I just want to make sure that we're conscientious of time and that we have another panel.
This is my last question. And just specifically in reference to veterans, and are there any in reference to veterans, are you be working with trying to figure out how best to serve them? Because one of the things I noticed that when they came in, staff was not prepared to handle a veteran's mental health situation based on the way they're acting.
Yeah, I can speak to that on two parts. The part about officers bringing people in handcuffs, shackles due to risk and injury, and veterans maybe having specialized training. We're one of the only counties, and actually I just talked with a lot of our CIT law enforcement around the state. We're one of the only ones, and this I applaud the chief on this, that we will stay with them until they get back into the locked unit or back and have been wanded. Meaning our police and our clinicians stay with them through that process to keep the hospital staff safe. Everywhere else in Maryland, the health article says you take them to the closest hospital and you turn them over and you clear to their security. We do not do that in Anne Arundel County. That makes our call times longer, yes, and we are sometimes in the ED for 4 hours, but we want to reduce that risk of injury to nurses and doctors and to bystanders who are in the ED. Sometimes you're sitting in the hallway with a person who is mentally ill and violent, and right next to that is someone who's coming in for a medical situation who may be, a lot of times we just talked about this, people are looking at us like, why are you in the same hallway with me and my loved one who is, struggling with the flu or a heart issue? So we stay with our individuals. Veterans, what I can say is a unique population. We do have someone here at Crisis who more specializes in that and has worked for a long time in that field. We also have 2 officers who are veterans themselves who we utilize on calls to kind of identify and offer more of a peer-to-peer support piece on those calls when we are working with them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Delegate Simmons. I know that we could stay on this call all day because we're so appreciative of the extraordinary work that our Anne Arundel County team does. I just had a final question, which is if you could speak to the nexus of 988-211 press 4 and the warm line, and also how can we continue to support the good work that you're doing here in our county?
Well, I'll start, and if Adrian or Catherine want to jump in with 988 and 211, we have seen an increase in calls, but understanding that 911 is just an easier number to remember And in most cases, if they're designated our county, that gets immediately transferred into our warm line. We are just starting to keep those numbers and look at them. It's kind of hard because sometimes they transfer without giving us information. We're working with the jurisdictions to say, hey, when you transfer the call, make sure we get a little more information so we're not asking the person to repeat. So there's some flaws right now. There's also, we're hearing from some people who are transferred in, I got bounced 2 times before it got to me. The reason is if you're calling from a cell phone and that's designated, say, Carroll County, and your number goes to 988, they're going to kick you first to your jurisdiction. But then the jurisdiction says, well, wait a minute, you're in Glen Burnie right now. I got to kick you to Anne Arundel County. So there are times when we're finding family members saying, you know, I got transferred 3 times. I've told my story 3 times. So we have to work on that piece a little bit in regards to making sure that we are assisting everyone. The other big problem that I'm seeing, and it speaks a little bit to what we were talking about, and I forgot to talk about, we were talking about smaller jurisdictions and how we're helping. The biggest barrier I'm seeing, and I just spoke to this at our CIT meeting with our CIT behavioral health side of things, nobody wants to cross jurisdictional lines. And until I myself and a few of the bigger jurisdictions are the only ones where our teams will go across the border. That has to stop. Because people themselves, we sit on borders. So a Charles County, a PG County person may come to Anne Arundel Medical Center. Well, we're not doing that person service if you don't come out and meet with them from your jurisdiction to link them back. If someone is at Harbor Hospital, we go there. If I have someone at Laurel Regional, we go there and meet with them. I'm hearing from other counties, they're not in my county, I can't come out. That's not going to work moving forward. And so with 988 and this bouncing around, I get concerned as jurisdictions don't bounce. How is this going to be successful as we're routing calls and doing follow-up? So I think my biggest concern right now is we've got to break down that barrier of bordering situations.
Well, thank you so much for all your time and your service to the members. You have all of these slides and the contact information for our extraordinary crisis intervention team, our mental health agency, the Department of Health. And I know that you have made yourself available to us in the past. So thank you so much for that. Speaking of borders, I did want to make everyone aware that the District 21 folks do have, they do border Anne Arundel and Prince George's, and they did have to leave for the Prince George's meeting. It's not because they wanted to leave, but they're doing double duty. And of course, Delegate Simmons also is Anne Arundel County, but District 12 crosses Anne Arundel and Howard. So I think it's a good point that we need to figure out how to break down these barriers. With that, I want to thank you once again, and also welcome Hospice of the Chesapeake and Mike Brady from Hospice of the Chesapeake. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the delegates allowing us a few minutes to talk with you this morning, provide you with a few updates. As mentioned, my name is Mike Brady. I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Hospice of the Chesapeake. I'm joined this morning by Shauna Chabot, who is our Chief Advanced Officer, as well as Sandy Dillon, who is our Director of Communications. In the interest of time, we want to just share a general overview of Hospice of the Chesapeake, and then we're happy to take a few questions if you do have them. So first, a brief background on Hospice of the Chesapeake. Our mission is caring for life throughout the journey with illness and loss. I think people hear the word hospice and everybody gets a little bit nervous and says, oh, I'm not sure I want that, or it's scary. But we're the ones who walk alongside not only the patient, but the family as they are going through that journey. Because hospice really is more than just the patient. Patient, quite frankly, many times is the easy one. The patient knows the road they're on. But when we have a nurse or an NP who enters that home where the patient is, it's navigating that family. That can be an entirely different dynamic. Some of it could go back to even the previous speakers, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's the son and daughter don't get along, the kids haven't talked in 20 years, etc. But in that, we have been within Anne Arundel County now for over 40 years. And we've been continuing to grow our community roots here in the community, as well as within the state. On an average daily basis, we serve 600 to 650 hospice patients every single day. So that is for the full year. Every day we have about 600 families that are going through a very difficult time. We're the ones who try to step in and kind of relieve some of that stress off the family. For context, we're the largest independent community-based hospice in the Mid-Atlantic region. And something about services we offer beyond that is something referred to as palliative care, referred as supportive care. And that's almost a pre-hospice. That is not governed at all by a certificate of need, but is just another service that we offer. Not a very well reimbursed service, but it is offered. As far as part of our growth, not only within Anne Arundel County, we have expanded in the last 3 years to serve Charles County as well as Calvert County. And these were smaller hospice agencies that we realized just needed a little bit of help. So we've really tried to move and take our services not only to the residents or to the community members here in Anne Arundel, but provide those services beyond our county borders. As I mentioned, we do provide that supportive care, which leads then into hospice. But then after that, we provide grief support. So here at Hospice in Chesapeake, we do have counselors who can serve that family after that patient has passed away. Not every hospice agency has counselors who will provide care the way we do. But we have found it to be, we're meeting these families where they are, whether that's in group therapy, we have men's groups, women's groups, therapy for children. We do have a children's garden here at our Pasadena campus. And how do we help those patients and families, as we're going through this process? This is, again, one of the most stressful things that patients and families will go through. And how do we help walk with them? So if you're the husband or wife, you're not worried about, am I getting the right bed? Do I have the right commode? Am I doing the medications correctly? We come in, we take care of it. All you have to be then is a son, a daughter, a husband, or a wife. That's all you have to worry about. We'll take the rest of it off your hands. Many patients, most of the patients that we serve are in the patient's home. Let's think about where do patients want to be? They want to be at home. We do, though, provide services within assisted living facilities, within skilled nursing facilities, all of which became very challenging during COVID. You can imagine. If any of you have heard of a window visit, those were very real, where you may be doing social work, maybe talking to a family through a window at a nursing home. We do have 2 inpatient care centers, and how those are utilized, that is for patients who may be going through extreme bouts of pain. So, for example, if we cannot get pain managed within the home, they may come to the Rebecca Fortney Center, which is here in Pasadena, or the Charles County Inpatient Care Center in Charles County, and they are under a doctor's supervision for, say, 3 to 5 days, and then they will go back home to be cared for. So just giving you an idea of the breadth of our services, kind of how we try to care for patients and families. And we have great relationships also within Baltimore Washington Medical Center, where we have patients there, as well as Anne Arundel Medical Center, where we can care for patients. So again, we can really meet the patients where they are and where the care is needed. Again, for some context, as far as size, we've cared for over 2,400 patients in Anne Arundel just last year, 2022. And over 24,000 patients over the last 10 years. So it has been very integrated within the community. We're the ones, on Friday night, I may get a phone call from a board member saying I have a family in need, and that's us. We're 24/7. We jump into action, and we really try to help each of the patients and families. Some of the previous presentation talked about the shortages. We see that in clinical care. We have clinical care shortages, nurses, that is something we've been really wrestling with for the better part of two plus years. So as pictured right there is our Rebecca Fortney Inpatient Care Center here in Pasadena. It is a 14 patient suite, just opened a little less than 10 years ago, and has cared for over 3,000 patients since it's been open. So I'd invite each of you to come up and visit us. We have 7 acres here in Pasadena, right off Route 2. And just to see our campus and to get a tour and find out a little more about Hospice of the Chesapeake. But with that, I want to turn it over to Shauna Chabot, who's going to talk a little bit more about the Rebecca Fortney Patient Care Center.
Great. Thank you so very much. Thanks, Mike. And thank you to the delegation for allowing us to speak today. We are thrilled to be here and have this opportunity. And we are coming before the delegation to ask for assistance in upgrading and refreshing certain parts of our campus. So a little history, we purchased the campus back in 2012 in Pasadena. It's 7 acres. And for those of you who might remember, it was the old Harms Engineering property. There are four buildings on the campus. And as Mike mentioned, we built the Rebecca Fortney Inpatient Care Center in 2015. It's a beautiful, beautiful 14-bed care center that serves as an alternative to hospitalization. Since opening, we've had probably more than 13,000 people go through, be they patients, family, community, staff. And as this was built as a home-like setting, we had furniture and fixtures that were more like a home. And so with that many people going through in the last 7 years, there's been an awful lot of wear and tear on the building. And so we're at a point now where internally it needs a lot of refreshing in order to really keep it like the home-like setting that we really want it to be. In addition, the rest of our campus needs a little bit of help as well. When we purchased the campus, we redid the administrative building, but at the time we did not connect the septic system over to the county infrastructure. We just didn't have the money to do it at the time. And when we built the inpatient care center, we thought, well, maybe we might be able to do it then, but that was not possible either. So we've continued to have some septic issues in our main administrative building. And we believe now is the time that we need to connect it back to the inpatient care center and back to Light Street in order to fix the problems that we've been having. In addition, the main administrative building and the outbuilding that houses our Hussman Supportive Care Center, those buildings were built in the 60s. And so we're having some trouble with the roofs that are on them, and they now need to be repaired and changed. In addition, there is a third building on the campus that when we purchased it was a daycare center. And again, we built the inpatient center. We did some internal upgrades of the admin building, but we didn't do anything to that building. And that building now houses our finance department, and they're having some heating and air conditioning issues that need to be upgraded. And then, as I mentioned, the inpatient center really needs all new furniture for patients and family members. It needs repainting. There's just some general wear and tear on the building internally and the furniture that just really needs to be replaced. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have before we do one last slide about CON. Mike, can I turn it back over to you to do is,
Yeah, absolutely, Shauna.
there you go.
So, and just some background as far as how hospice works in the state of Maryland. Hospice is governed in the state of Maryland by something referred to as the Certificate of Need. And if you think about, what is that? It's essentially a license for a county. So each county may have a license, and that is governed by the Healthcare Commission. So we currently, if Anne Arundel County currently has 5 active competitors, Prince George's has 8. So every county is a little bit different, and it's really determined if there is an unmet need within the community. The Healthcare Commission would go ahead and issue a license. This does not happen very often. Many states that do not have this certificate of need, if you think of California, it essentially becomes the Wild West where anybody can set up a hospice, and it may be a hospice of 10, could be a hospice of 50. But it really becomes much more watered down, and the quality that you see in some of the states that do not have a certificate of need, the quality suffers. So certificate of need we find is very important, and it has us maintain a very high level of quality to be sure that families and patients get served very, very well. Just to add on, you can see Anne Arundel and Prince George is there. If you take the other counties we serve, Charles County as well as Calvert, we're the only provider within those communities. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions on certificate of need or any of the improvements we need here on the Pasadena campus.
Did we have any questions from the members? Seeing none, I would say you did a great job. You answered all our questions. I will also make a suggestion to our delegation that maybe this is a delegation visit that we want to organize, and I'll reach out to the members, see if it's something that we would like to do as a delegation, or if they want to visit individually. I do want to thank you very much for coming today and sharing your work. It's really important and very much needed. And we appreciate you coming before the delegation today.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the time this morning.
Thank you.
Just a few reminders to our members. You should have received the request for the delegation fund. Please be sure to get your delegation dues to Roger Massey by the first week of February. And of course, get your legislative bond initiative requests on the schedule. All the presentations are limited to 5 minutes, and we want to make sure that we have ample time for all of our really important nonprofit organizations. Next week, we will have presentations from Superintendent Bedell, from the Anne Arundel County Board of Education, and from Lead Maryland. Once again, if you are an organization who wish to be acknowledged during our delegation meeting, please make sure to email our delegation secretary at aacd@mlis.state.md.us. And I pushed this to the end because he wasn't in the meeting when we started, but I want to make sure that we acknowledge a big happy birthday to Nick Kipke from District 31. So if all of our members want to unmute and just wish Nick a happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Madam Vice Chair, did you had some announcements about an opportunity for our interns?
Yes, thank you so much, Chairwoman. For the Anne Arundel County delegation, I have spoken to our library services, and if your interns or anyone in your office is interested in a tour, we are putting of the complex. Historically, we are putting one together. Please reach out to my office. And we will make sure to add them. If I may, Chair, may I make one more announcement?
Absolutely.
Thank you. This is a reminder also for the Women's Caucus that are Martin Luther King Day of Service clothing drive for the House of Ruth in Maryland continues. All gently used clothing for women and children and new can be dropped off at my office or at the Women's Caucus office in the Senate building. Please contact me for any questions, and you will get a reminder email today as well. So thanks so much. We have until February 13th to drop those things off. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I did also want to let our members and our viewers know about an extraordinary art exhibit that is happening at Maryland Hall. Last night, I was able to attend the reception for Aftermath. It's an exhibit focusing on the healing power of art and community that rises up following gun violence. And there is a partner work called the Capital 5, honoring our heroes of the press. It is a portrait exhibit by local artists of the 5 Capital Gazette victims of the shooting. And it's a very, very powerful, extraordinary, important exhibit. And it is continuing until April the 2nd. So I wanted to make sure I put that on the radar. It was really powerful. We had families of the victims there, and the artists responding to the experience of those portraits. So if you get a chance, please get out to see it. I also want to encourage all of our members, if there's something happening in your district and you want to let us know, please make it known in our delegation meetings. Do we have any other announcements from other members? Do we have any other announcements from our members? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Have a great weekend, everyone.